welcome to the Houston Area Museum and our presentation for today. We're going to learn more about Margit Mindrum, and I see a lot of her relatives are here today, including myself. Our grandmothers, Jon and Naomi's grandmother, and my grandmother, Helleland Overland, were first cousins. So we're like second, third cousins, however that works. I'm proud to be part of that family. Yes. And so I'm also quite pleased with however many pictures came in to be shared that Margit had painted. It's wonderful examples of her talent, and you'll hear more about her in just a few minutes. But I'd like to introduce Jon Nowland, her son, and Naomi Nowland is back there, and their father is here also. Ron Nowland is also here to enjoy this afternoon. So without further ado, as they say, I will turn this over to Jon.
They have to be applauding you because I haven't done anything yet. I first must apologize. You are my guinea pigs, our guinea pigs. We've never done this before. So this will be a learning experience. So if you start throwing fruit, yeah, I'll try to catch them. First of all, I gotta tell you why it's me that's up here. I'll tell you that later. That's not a tease. That's just poor planning. I did want to ask, how many of you here ever met Margit Mindrum? Good number of hands. How many of you have now or grew up with paintings done by her on your walls? More people than met her. You may know she died in the spring of '75. That's 50 years ago. I'm impressed that so many people have met her back then. I must confess, I was a kid then. I do know that there are cousins that will probably figure, why am I up here? I don't have the Mindrum name. I did not grow up in Houston. There are others that knew her better because they were older. She died when I was 14. There were others that were, well into their adulthood. I never saw her paint. I never discussed with her painting. I never saw her setup. She painted mostly in the wintertime in an upstairs bedroom where the light was good. And when we came to visit, that was not where we hung out, and that probably, the things were not set up for that. But yeah, I grew up, there were paintings. My mom was one of the most devout fans. She bought a lot of paintings, and yeah, we had them on our walls before I was born. The reason I'm here is because I made a website, and I will be featuring the website. It has everything that I can think of and more on her. So if I weren't here, you could replace me with the website. So I will talk about that more. This is, I believe, the venue. Again, I was not here when, in 1972, I believe, she had her one and only art show that she attended, that I think was held in her lifetime. There were several art shows where she was featured later. And it's kind of weird to be in the same spot. Be nice if she were here, but she had better things to do. I must say, as I grew up with those paintings, I was aware she was a painter, but to me, primarily she was grandma. The closest or the earliest I really connected the two was when I turned 10. In 1971, you want to do the math, I was born in 61, in 71, she died in 70, did I just say 5? Yeah. And so she'd done the bulk of her painting, but when I was 10, and I've seen the pictures where, we've got several pictures where she put a collection of hers on the sofa, on the back, on the seat, in front of it. So, you know, it could a dozen to 12 paintings. I faced that scenario when I was 10. Mom was going to buy me a painting for my own. And so I'd love to know what other pictures were there. I will show you the one I ended up picking. My 10-year-old artistic talent chose that. I must say, my tastes have changed a little bit since I was 10. This is not one of her best works. If you look, she kept a book that recorded all of her paintings. She recorded the size, the date, she had a reference number to it, who they ended up going to, and a title. She gave it a title. This one is the only one in her book she called Leftover Paint. Mom says she had the bottles of, I forget the brand name, but she was just dabbing out the remnants of the paint and trying to get rid of it. And if you look at it, it's so atypical. There's no background. You walk through those bushes, you're falling off the end of the earth. It just, I take this as a lesson to me to be humble, taste change, and Grandma did a lot better work. Oh, by the way, yeah, I'll sometimes refer to as Grandma as opposed to Margit. That's a bad habit, but I hope you understand. So, let's see. I'm going to give a little bit of background. It's tough to dive right into her paintings because she was somebody that had a full life before she started painting. She started painting, she was creative as a youngster, but she didn't really get into painting until she was into her 50s. At that time, her mom had died, and there's some suggestion that her mom was not a fan of art by young ladies. The family story is, well, we'll get into her family, but her mom had died. Her last kid, my mom, had left for, you know, make her own life. And so supposedly she was at home looking for things to do. She was typically a busy farmer. You know, whether you want to call her a farm wife, you know, they were in on this together. Homer did a lot of the work. Outside, she did the domestic stuff, and she was wanting to do more stuff. She got back into painting. She'd done some textile work. She'd done some, what's the, what, Jake?
She did the braided rugs.
She did the braided rugs, but she also did where you do images on fabric.
Stenciling.
Stenciling, yes, thank you. But she grew up in a very artistic family. Anybody know who her dad was? Tarcho. He's got a name that many people would recognize. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of order here. I have to look at Lee Griffin and call him out. When I was, sorry Lee, when I was a teenager, I changed my name. I changed, my middle name had been Rolf. My folks named me Rolf just because I had a first name that was 3 syllables, and they gave me a short one, and I changed it to Mindrum. And so between my sister, whose middle name is Margit, and me, whose middle name is Mindrum, you gotta know how to think of Margit Mindrum. Lee, when he heard that years later, said, why didn't you change it to Lunsberg? The Lunsbergs were the artistic one. Margit was a Lunsberg. She married into the Mindrums, and Palmer was, her biggest fan. She gives him great credit for supporting her, buying the equipment. He's the one that, without him, she wouldn't have been painting. But she grew up in a very artistic family. Tarkjo was educated beyond grade school in Norway, came over here at age 25 and trained to be a teacher, but if English isn't your native language, you're not going to easily find a teaching job. So over here, he built houses, he carved, he did paintings as well, and he wrote poetry. I mean, you can't get more well-rounded. Guy who builds houses and gets poems published and put out his own book as well as poems in some little mags. Tarkjo married somebody who wasn't very artistic, Helga. We've got pictures of Helga doing rugs, but it was much more the domestic arts. Things that had to be practical. She was more concerned about putting food on the table for the family. Whereas Tarkjo was a little bit of he was a hard worker, but he's a little bit more of a dreamer and creative. And so it's interesting, Tarkjo and Helga had 4 kids that survived, 2 boys, 2 girls. The boys, one got super educated, went off and did nuclear physicist stuff. The other one, better known than Tarkjo for his carving, created kugelstols, created other artwork that's around the area, featured in numerous things, magazines. And so, at one point, 3 Lunsbergs was an exhibit at Vesterheim, and one of those Lunsbergs was Margit Mindrum. So her start, with a family that was very creative, her start as an artist was pretty humble. Most of her life was not being an artist. It was being a farmer. And one of her early works here is showing, this is a place called Relila. I probably don't roll my R's quite right, but this is north of Bratsburg on the hill before you go down into Rushford. This is the farm that Palmer and Margit were unlucky enough to buy just before the Depression. So they bought this in, I think, 28, and 29 came along and the market crashed, and they kept paying on this as prices went south. And my mom came along in 1933, where she also describes it as the depths of the Depression. Well, this was maybe 3 years later, and by 36, maybe the economy was getting better, but the laws were such at the time that the bank could still foreclose on you while you're making payments. The laws have changed differently here, but they hadn't bought the farm outright, and the farm sold it out from under them. So this was done by memory. This is, Grandma's in the garden here working. Here are the 3 boys, the older sons coming home from school, and the 3 youngest. My mom's that white dot. She is the youngest. And then the twins, Ellert and Ellen. And Ellert is here. How many people are pictured in Margit paintings who are still with us? And here's Palmer working the garage, or working in the barn. This is watercolor. It was found rolled up. Almost everything else you'll see is the thick stock. I wouldn't recommend trying to roll it up. And that's how you can tell this is an early one. She also made the transition from watercolor to gouache, which some people describe as a dry watercolor. Many of these, they look kind of like an oil. They definitely don't look like a watercolor. They don't have that washed out look. And so I'm using this just to represent her time as a mother, 6 kids, right? 6? Working on the farm. Who's got time to paint? More power to her. So, I got to talk about, I'm the youngest child of her youngest child. So there's plenty of older cousins. My mom liked to say that talent skipped a generation. I'm not sure where it is in my generation, but Mom liked to say artists need appreciators. And if everybody was doing artwork, that'd be great, but if no one appreciated it, we'd be in a worse place. And Mom was an appreciator. And so things that my mom did to support was, for one, she bought lots of paintings early. Mom also helped Grandma compile her memoirs. She didn't like to call them memoirs or reminiscences. This came out shortly after Grandma died. Grandma never saw it. Mom has done programs like this more often than I have. Here's a DVD of one done at La Crosse. I wish I'd watched that before doing this. La Crosse Sons of Norway. And so what happened long after Mom was gone is my mom still wanted to promote this artist. And so that's where my mom and my sister came in. And she's hiding in the back. And I want her to tell about her role, because I wouldn't be up here without Naomi's work, her legwork, and
hello, my name's Naomi, and I could make a case that this talk today had its first stirrings in 1988. That was the year that my mom showed me a spiral notebook. And this spiral notebook was where Margit had recorded her paintings, who bought them, and how much they paid. So Mom then talked about, wouldn't it be interesting if we could try and track down as many of her paintings as possible? So using that notebook and a telephone book and Mom's memory, we sent out as many letters as we could. And I mailed it, and it was quite the summer undertaking. Mom and I spent many weekends visiting lots of people in and around Houston. I was so impressed at people being willing to open their house up and say, here are the paintings, and I could walk in and take pictures of them. I was just blown away. Of her 602 known paintings from the Spiral Notebook, I managed to document and photograph 259. I managed to document, but not photograph, another 106. That is well over half. I felt that was pretty good, since at that time Margit had been gone for 13 years. Unfortunately, some paintings we found were destroyed, most by fires, and some through neglect. Because of my project, Marion Nelson, the then curator of the Westerheim Museum in Decorah, decided it would be worth it to host an exhibit featuring the 3 Lunsbergs. So, being Tarpjo, Hulver, and Margit. And Marion Nelson chose 40 of Margit's paintings that I had pictures of. 40 that he thought were the most representative of her paintings. And that exhibit ran during the summer of 1990. We have some booklets up here that show those 40 pictures. 10 years later, in the fall of 2000, Marion Nelson spearheaded an exhibit featuring paintings by Minnesotans of Norwegian background. And that was displayed at the James J. Hill House in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and 4 of Margit's paintings were on display there. So we have lots to be proud of for Margit.
my mom created photo albums of all the photos they had taken. These have followed the same numbering system as in Margit's book. And so there's, it's nice to page through this. But it got to a point where this was sitting on the shelf at my mom's place, and I was working for a computer software company, and it's like, this could be on the internet. Very few people are stopping over at mom's place to see this. And so that's why I'm asked here today, is because that's what I did. There's a website, margitmindrum.com. If you need to remember that, it's my sister's middle name and my middle name.com. In here, well, I'm glad we have access to the internet. I've got, and we'll talk about the paintings. This isn't trying to sell the website, but I've got a timeline, and all these, or some of these, have links off. Here's an entry on this, the show that she held. August, Margit has her first and only art show held in her hometown community center. I also take note there, Margit makes no mention of this event in her memoir, whereas she talks glowingly about their 50th anniversary celebration the year before. That to me is typical of her, in your memoir. Is that a place to brag? I mean, that's what I would be doing in my memoir. So that's an overview, a timeline. And then got to be a little bit about her family, and so if the pictures load, there it is. Tarcho, Helga, brother Holgor. She had another brother and sister who I need to put in here as well. They were artistic, but expressed it different ways. And then, of course, the bulk of the website is the artwork. And I'll get back to that. Her memoir. How many people have written memoirs when she wasn't going to be famous, but she felt it important for her grandkids to know the stories? Pictures are a way of remembering the stories, and so she compiled stories, and it was something intended for the grandkids. And so in this, the complete contents of the book are online. I've added titles, chapter numbers, extra pictures, and it's still a work in progress. But if you go through, there's a safe, easy way to read it. And I just now landed on Oak Ridge, the second time they lived on Oak Ridge. That ties in with this painting here. Once they lost the farm, Grandpa refused, pride or whatever, to declare bankruptcy. He was paying for this farm long after they weren't living on it. And so after having been briefly a farm owner, they became renters. And they rented, they moved like every 2 years. Mom, looking back, thinks it's a godsend to her memory because she knows when things happen. When so-and-so left for college, that must have been when they were living in Paradise Valley. So every 2 years, things don't blur into the background. Here, they moved back to Oak Ridge. That farm is no longer. It's, I believe, the trailhead for the, Wet Bark Trail. But this is where mom left for college and grandma was left alone, and she started painting again in the early 50s. And one of the first things she painted, Jake brought this in, you see it on there. I love this because out of all her stuff she painted, I think this is the only thing that's round. But also, I believe it was probably hung over a stovepipe or some opening. Again, something, to my mind, functional, something that's useful. And so that was one of the first things. The first painting that got framed that, I got a picture of some here. Oh, here's the stenciling she did. Which I find interesting because we can talk about animals in her paintings later. She really didn't do animals, and yet stenciling is a different matter. Her first painting, it's larger than that. Grandpa liked it so much that he went to town and got it framed, and they hung it over the piano. They had an upright piano that covered the doorway. And with that picture over the piano, they really did cover the doorway. Again, it's like functional. It's something that served a purpose. I think she had to fight that and actually start working art for art's sake later. Anyway. Oh yes, that was where I was going. Back to the website. If I can go back home. So after the memoir, we'll get back to the artwork, but her letters. I think it's an interesting, we've got her round robin letters that went through the family. Most of the excerpts I have in there are directly related to her painting. One of the quotes I love is where she tells the family she loses track of time when she's mixing colors. And that's something that I'm not an artist, but you know, when I see a little thing of paint, there's what, a dozen colors, but you do paintings, you need colors in between those. So you combine colors, and as she's mixing the colors to get the right shade of sky, you know, she's in the flow. She, you know, those winter days must have just flown by. But I especially like the early letters. Palmer and Margit had an interesting courtship, and we have letters from him writing back to somebody you knew in high school saying, hey, are you free? He's in Arizona at the time. It's hard to me to think of Grandpa not here in Houston. And so she writes back, you know, dear friend, yeah, I'm available. And so their courtship is via letters. Grandpa went out to Arizona because his fiancée was out there. You know, it's like Grandpa had a fiancée. Well, she had TB or something like that and went out there to recover and recognized she wasn't going to recover. And so she freed Palmer of his obligation. He's thinking back, okay, who then do I hit on? He may not have chose those words, but anyway, that's here among the information about Margit. So let's get on to paintings. That's why you're here. We showed some early ones, the watercolor, the round one. I have no idea if that's gouache or watercolor. We've got some, the first framed one. And if you zoom in on these, you should be able to click on any painting and it goes large. Okay, make me a letter. But what I try to do is group paintings. Oh, by the way, my sister mentioned, and we would not be able to organize this nearly so well if we didn't have Grandma's book. And in her book, her little book, she recorded, and this is my trying to recreate the book online. She recorded a numbering system. So you look at the very first one, it says 52-01. That was done in the year 1952. That's the first one recorded. And so we can tell the year and the number. And so as you scroll down, in 59 she did only 5 recorded. In 60 she did 23 paintings. And so you scroll down here, second to the bottom of 60, 60-22, Birch by Lake. The dimensions 16 by 20, the cost $5. And it went to Paul and Elsie, her eldest son. So in this, it's the first person it went to, the name she gave it, and then, yeah, you scroll down to 71, you'll see one that says leftover paint. And then I try to have links off to some related ones. So let's look at this water. Birches by River, 60-06. It was a gift to a bazaar, and Ellen Olson, I don't know if you can read that easily. Ellen is her other daughter, and as I understand, Ellen put it at like a church bazaar and it's sold there. Jake? So that is in the group called Water with Canoe for some reason. I just decided, and that is, I believe, this one, which again is not opening up. I do want to say one thing. Come on, at least one of these has to open up. Thank you. So how did it get back to the family? No, this is one that actually opened up. That one is the one that started this. Yes.
I went to the bazaar and swiped it. No, it always hung at mom's house.
Did Grandma know that?
Maybe mom bought it.
Yeah. Well, the book says bazaar, but it also indicated, well, maybe Ellen bought it at the
That's
bazaar.
what I wondered.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. A gift to the bazaar, and then, yeah. One thing I'd like to point out here and elsewhere, Grandma wasn't perfect. There's one painting I'll show, if I remember, plowing, where she got something wrong and she was corrected. Here, this one looks a little bit more realistic, but almost all of those, she loved the lines of a canoe. And so she did a lot of canoes. I don't know that she did any rowboats, but she treated the canoes like they were rowboats. Anybody that does canoeing knows you pull them up on shore, and typically then you pull them over. She's got canoes hanging out in the water like they're rowboats, and it's like, you don't tie them off and they go floating away. She was more into the beauty of it than the accuracy. That's my take on it. But maybe I can go back to the plowing one, I find. Anyway, her book is being reproduced. It's not there yet. Maybe that's how I can find it. It's in the 60s. Plowing. I grew up with the second one on my family's wall. It's part of the Four Seasons that we had growing up. And Mom would talk about one like it that Grandma had revised. She had done something wrong and had it pointed out to her. And I I like this one. I think the birches are gorgeous. The hills look like around here. It wasn't until much later that I came across this one. This one's similar. There's haying going on. Was this the one that she had modified? Well, didn't know that until, I mean, someone else may have known this, but there was proof. We found an old black and white photo, and this photo, it was not by itself, it was actually on the couch with a bunch of other paintings, but it's like, I recognize that. And so I zoomed in and made this as pretty as possible, but if you look closely, you'll see there's a guy standing next to the hay wagon, pitchforking stuff up onto the hay wagon, and her loving husband Palmer says, we don't do it that way. We have a contraption on the back. So here you can see where she drew out the guy and added the contraption. But we got photographic evidence that she messed up to start with. Oh yeah, I do have that snapshot. Here it is in the lower left. This is a photograph, and on the back of this photograph, you see her 6 kids across the top. On the back of it, she says, I plan to take the one winter scene with horses and sleigh and the fall scene with Little Red Schoolhouse to the Houston County Fair this fall. It will be fun to see them together with other amateurs' work. That's on the back of the snapshot. And it's like, nice. It's nice to know when the photo was, what she was thinking. And we tried to identify, we don't know all the pictures, don't know where they went. I do have a place in this website where I have some of those pictures. If you can identify them, that'd be great. And to identify them, we're trying to assign the name and the number. So, you know, what year and what number of the year. So, I've been rattling on here. I want to take a break and sip some water. Somebody have something they want to throw out about these or your own favorite? I know a lot of people brought in pictures. There's some that I want to discuss, perhaps.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
In your, and thank you for such an interesting presentation. Did she have a part in her book where she said how many she gifted out? She did gift, as I say, about this sweet lady here. Grace brought one, was tell her about it. As a gift for a wedding gift.
Yeah. I don't know what year it was, but also, I can't tell where the picture was painted.
What the picture is of?
Well, it was kind of like a picture of a farm and some trees, and it has a church on it. And I was thinking it was a stone church, but I don't, people don't know why.
As I go through, you know, with as many paintings as I can see, I'm looking for, yeah, there are some that look pretty generic.
That's the one.
That one, I just saw that like a half hour ago for the first time. It does have some characteristics that would make you think it's of a specific place.
I just don't know. I've had it on my wall, and I keep looking at it going, you know, where was it?
And it may not be a specific place. If we can identify it, there are others, you know, I recognize this church, I recognize, of course, Stone Church and Holland Prairie, and she usually identifies that in the title, if it is of a specific place.
I knew Doris and the family for many years. We were neighbors. I used to go and pick up her mail and bring it to her because she babysat. And I'd always come in and enjoy the company. We always had coffee together. And then the elder came in and would have coffee with us. picture for me and gave it to me as a wedding present. And
If she's the one that bought it, she may have her name, I mean, I've heard that name, it's probably in the book. And so we can see if that matches up.
So, but I mean, I was so proud to know the Mindrum family and the neighbors. How they always treated me so nice. I never got to see hubby very much. I got to see Doris more than I did him because he was on the truck. But, and I got to spend time with Ellert. So I got to know Ellert really well. So I was very proud and love the family.
It's good to hear. I certainly did not experience them as the disciplinarians that my mom says they had been.
Yes.
So I believe the nice folks mentioned. Anybody else have something they want to mention about?
My mother and father were very good friends of Margaret and Palmer.
Yeah.
And they were neighbors. Plus, Palmer was a janitor in the school.
Yeah, it's interesting to consider after they retired from farming. We've got pictures of the school bus. He drove bus. He also did janitor work. The school bus buried in snow up on their place. They also were for many years janitors at the Stone Church,
Yes.
where they are now permanent residents.
I knew Andrea. I used to go over and have coffee with Andrea all the time. You know, but that was our sparking spot. So,
I'm just going to pull out a couple of my pictures. I know that there may be 10 pictures over there others brought. One of them, this is one I particularly liked. And she made several versions of this as she was trying to get things right. The story behind this one is, this reminds me of Up by Their Place, which is quite different now. As I was saying earlier, she started painting in the early 50s when they moved back to Southridge, and then they were finally able to buy it again. Stop being renters and buy a place. They bought a place where South Grant Street dead-ended at the time. It was a ramshackle, I mean, it's unrecognizable now. It's completely redone, and the street also goes beyond that. Grant Drive, no longer Grant Street. She took a hiatus in the mid-50s, mid-1950s, to work and making that place someplace livable. And so she kicked up again doing painting in the late 50s. And she commented one time how she hadn't noticed before how much purple there was in the landscape. As she would walk through, it's like, so she called this Violet Road. There's one other name to it. But I love how she did the shadows across, and there is sort of that violet cast to it, different than so many of her others, which are bright greens or fall colors. And so she played with trying to create something with this tone, and I just think it's one of her better executed paintings. And this is one that's been in this frame now for more than 50 years and just doesn't seem right to redo it. Next up of mine, we're talking about canoes. This is one I bought at an auction around here, and my first thought was, wow, that frame is busy. I was going to replace the frame, and then it's like, no, it grew on me. Seems appropriate for a cabin. But this is the typical canoe. I get a little worried it's going to drift off. One of my strong connections to Grandma's artwork is this one. This painting is one Grandma got tired of. She painted this one in 1960, before I was born. This was where my dad, who's back there, was a pastor. This is Fountain Lutheran Church, rural Hustler, Wisconsin. Thanks, Vanna. She did this in 1960. My folks took it home, put it on their wall. Parishioners would stop by and visit and say, hey, I like that. Can I have one? And so you look in her book, and it's like, oh, she did 5 paintings of this and gave it to my folks to resell. And so we don't know where they went, because in the book just says my folks, and my folks don't have that many of them. They have the one. Well, some have come back. She painted 5 in this batch, 15 in another batch. Eventually, she had painted more than 50 of this same scene. Most of them fall. I've heard of one that's done in the spring. I'd love to see it. But there's summer, there's some, I believe, are winter. I think her fall ones, she felt most comfortable. But 50 of them. This is the original. And I like it. I inherited it because this is where I was baptized. And so it's special to me that way. So if you have one of these, you're not alone.
Did she paint from memory? Or did she have pictures?
The question is, did she paint by memory or did she have pictures? Yes. There were a number of, and we find in her, she had a bin of artwork that she used to inspire her. Sometimes she would do paintings from things she saw in a magazine. Other times people would bring her a photograph and say, you know, can you do this of my house? We've got, okay, that's not it. We've got, you know, the Evenson house or the so-and-so farm as labels. She kind of didn't like to do, reportedly, paintings from photos because she talked about seeing in people's eyes when they see the painting. It's like, oh, that's not exactly how it, you know, was. There's the famous one there's a hay shocks in a valley along the river where somebody had said, can you do this? And she painted it, and she had left out the metal truss bridge in the background. And the person said, hey, where'd the bridge go? And she said, supposedly, you want to see the bridge? Look at the photograph. You know, it didn't fit with her artistic description. And yeah, by now, the bridge is long gone. Of course, the road curves a little bit differently now. But yeah, houses, farms, she used all sorts of, and some are clearly just imagination. I think she did better, in my opinion, when she had something to go on, and then she would vary it. There's a number of themes where this is one of those themed ones is an early picture of hers, quite large. I think there's a couple representations of it here, was in her living room. And whenever she sold one like it, she'd note in her book, like ours. And so she's got a lot of them that are like ours, and they vary. You know, there's a farm in the background or not. The hill in the background sometimes has a little of a cliff showing. The tree in the foreground varies in age. Some people, Mary Nelson, the Vesterheim curator, was saying, he noticed that it seems to get older in time. Well, I don't know about it. It's not a perfect progression. There are some times when she did at least 15 of them. It's just, I think she liked a tree with character. Even her most earliest trees didn't look like lollipop trees. You know, I could do lollipop trees. You know, but they got more gnarly, got more interesting, typically the older she got. And so, you know, a picture won't do that. Any other questions? Let's see. Let's see if I can bring this back up. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I missed this or not. Did she ever enter anything in the Houston County Fair?
Yes. I don't know how she did over time, but she did win a blue grand champion. Watercolor painting, 1970. Word is that they would give you a grand champion so you wouldn't enter again. Once you won grand champion, you were like forbidden from competing. I don't know if that's true. I see one down at the end that, to me, I think, I've got a category here, grand champion. And I've seen, the grand champion is, I don't know how I felt about it, but I realized that I've seen other artists do this before her. She copied somebody very closely. I've got one just like this myself. You see the bright green evergreen in the middle there. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. The landscape will change a little. To me, this looks like Montana High Valley. It doesn't look like, you know, right around here. Sometimes it looks a little bit more like that, but it's a very yellow, and if you find other representations, you can find this image done by, I think Robert Woods did one, a famous guy, artist, that she modeled a lot of hers on. This is not a unique concept from her. Nicely executed, but so yeah, in her book she's also got a number of them after 1970 that are listed as like grand champion. They had a number different name before she won that one. I also found it interesting because she did have maybe 8. I remember quite a few pictures around her house. But when she said like ours, it was always a specific one. She didn't do very many copies of others because maybe that's what people saw in their living room. It's like, I want one like that. So as I was saying earlier, I've tried to organize her 600 plus paintings, or the several hundred that we have, into what works for me: themes, categories. And so in my list here, and it's not quite clear, but if I look at Highland Prairie Church, I only have 2, in parentheses, 2 of them, but I know she did quite a few more. Here's a Highland Prairie, small size. One of my favorites is looking at her doing fences. She would do, especially snow and fences. Here's a whole bunch of barbed wire fences, and you see how the posts look like they've been drinking. And so you see a theme, farm in the background. Here you've got road close up. She's got one set I call snow globe. Somebody talked about the generic looking farm. Snow globe to me is, there's a little village, there's a little church in the distance. It looks like New England. It doesn't necessarily look like here. But pay attention to the road. It's always fresh snow. It's never currently snowing, but fresh snow. Sometimes there's just a trail through it with horse hooves Other times there's a couple cars have gone by. Other times you can see that it's been plowed, but never is the road down to blacktop. You know, it's never 3 days later where it's all melted. It's just, it's that fresh, but you know, it's always a little bit different. Sometimes there's more houses back there, some more trees. She wasn't a copy machine. She was varying it the way she felt like at the moment. Are there any themes you want explored?
I'd like to see some of the religious paintings.
Religious?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, let me go back. Religion was very important to her, and so she had a lot where she added, now this is a very long verse. Others, she only put parts of the verse in. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Okay, you've got a church in a boat or a canoe tied up there, I hope. Many people have seen The Lord is My Shepherd, and I've got photographs of maybe 9. This one I think is an earlier one just because the road is coming straight at you. And I've got a section in here on this Bible verse contains 2 parts basically. Leadeth me by still waters, and sure, that's what you wrote when there's like a small lake and there's sheep in front. Chilling. And then the other is the Lord is my shepherd, where there's sheep again, and they seem to be coming at you. And I always, when I look at this, think, I'm in their way. Marion Nelson commented on this series that you never see the shepherd. You know, it's like, is he driving them? Is he luring them? You know, how are they being led? But to me, it's like they've pulled up, stopped. You know, they're not walking anymore. They're looking at me, standing in their way. It's like, do we need to get out of the way? Here, typically, and you'll see it in others, notice the shadows. This is one my folks have, I grew up with. It's typically bright in the distance, and they're coming through a valley, and there's shadows, and sometimes the trees are awful gnarly. It's like, okay, this is a different theme, but here's another one where you've got almost like dust worked up by them, and they're coming through towards you. And I don't know if she was conscious of putting some of the same elements in each of them. I can't believe it's by accident. And I don't know that this one has the words on it, but it's obviously among that theme. Here's the By Still Waters. She's got several of these. I like this one, especially where you see how the water ripples out there. It's not a perfect reflection of the hill and the trees in the background. You know, she felt there needed to be a line there. Not all of them have that. This one, you know, you didn't need the ripple. So this is the Still Waters one. This one I like because how dark the clouds look. It looks like we need to get these sheep someplace before the storm comes. And those woods are dark. This one also has the unique quality, if that's the right word, of being the rare artwork that has a typo. So she misspelled shepherd. And that was pointed out to her by the person buying it, and she was so embarrassed and she wanted to redo it, and they were like, no. That's like, how many pieces of art have typos in them? The Lord is my whatever. SHEPHPRD is what I see that as. talk about religious theme, it's typically Lord's my shepherd, but also the table, the bounty spread out, and there she's used several times where it's somebody's farm, hay shocks out there, and she puts that. There's also one where you've got the hay shocks, yeah, and then you've got a steeple rising over the trees, but there's no saying. It's like, you don't need the saying. Anybody looking at it knows it's a religious picture. So, let's go back to the website. So thank you for asking about that theme. One of the things I do want to mention is animals. I talked about the sheep. There's many times when you picture a farm, you need to have farm animals. So there's been chickens, there's pigs and cows, but they're always in the distance. The largest animals you'll see that she has in her paintings are deer. And they are some of the better animals. I don't think she did sheep terribly well, but interesting to me, when I think of Grandma, I think of Doodoo the cat. They had a cat growing up. They had farm dogs, of course. There was, Gomer was the old dog they had. There's a recording of one of her paintings that, so-and-so's farm with dog. Maybe there was a dog hanging out on the porch, but I've not seen that painting. There's no recorded painting I know of with a cat in it, and yet, they grew up with dogs and cats. But you show farms, and you've got to have farm animals. That's what makes it a farm. And with people, somebody asked one time, what sort of paintings did she do? Did she do portraits? No. People are tough to paint. You will get pictures that she has, especially the early ones, where there's people, like I showed the Rello one, they're tiny, you can't see the face. Most of those showing people in the early pictures, they're walking away. They're walking to school, they're walking to church, they're walking, it's easier to draw the back of one's head. So I think she knew her limits, and the people virtually disappeared in the last 10 years of any of her painting. But I really wish she had painted a cat. Somebody asked about specific. Some of those you can tell she went from a portrait. This, the dollhouse, DAHL, is one of her most realistic ones. She's also got one of the Lunsford farm that is very realistic. It's interesting to note when she gets into other landscapes where the houses are very simple. They're like cabins. If she ever did a two-story house, it's almost always a specific one. It's from a painting, from a photograph. And then there are, this is the house that Jake grew up in, up Moody Valley. Marion Nelson, the curator, commented on her use of blending when it comes to the corn rows. You're looking down the corn rows, you can see them, and then you get over where you can't see down the corn rows so much. You don't need to get in that detail, it just sort of blurs. But this is my memory of going to the Olson farm, heading down that gravel road.
There was a little problem with that painting. My older brothers had a squirt gun fight in the house, and they found out indeed watercolors do run, and the hothouse ended up in the cornfield, so Grandma had to fix it.
There was another, one of the fountain pictures got damaged by a sprinkler system. And Jake's mom, Grandma was gone at the time, but Jake's mom, who was a pretty good artist in her own, touched it up. And she put clouds in there, and I think she wanted it to look, it doesn't quite look like Grandma did it. it looks respectable, but it, yeah. What you gonna do? You know, throw away a painting because it got some water stains on it? This is one of the religious paintings, but it's a specific farm, so I had it in a different category. It says, "Thou preparest a table before me" on it, but it's Wilson's farm. She identifies it as. Initial owner was M. Wilson. Anybody know M. Wilson? We have gone over an hour here. Sorry I'm babbling, but Dan, yes, you have a question?
Was the tree by the meandering stream which aged till it was dead, a dead tree?
That's an interesting. I don't recall ever seeing dead trees in her paintings. There are some where, you know, it's rare to have a fallen tree. There's one winter scene that's the monochromatic one where you can barely see the creek for all the trees that have fallen. I think that was done from a photograph. Most of the time, her areas of trees look like parks. There's a birch forest over there. You know, it's like birches grew in a park, in grass. So fallen trees or dead trees, sometimes it's hard to tell in the wintertime whether it's dead or just leafless. But, you know, in a summer picture, they're all green, healthy, maybe old, but still going trees. There's extremely few dead trees. I can't think of any. Any other questions that people want to share their, yes?
I saw a picture of a car. Was there a story behind that one?
You saw the one that was done for the Coles.
Okay.
They had this jalopy, and she wrote it, misspelling it, but she wrote it in her book, Jalopy. I believe one of the Coles is here. Cars rarely made, there were a couple early ones that have realistic-ish looking cars of the era, because, you know, you show a road and a country road, and yeah. There's very few, most roads are empty. She didn't do garages with a car in it. The one for the Coles was by request. I don't know that she enjoyed doing it. It's a distinctive, maybe they can hunt you down and tell you about it. The pictures of cars I've seen from the early ones, you can't recognize the car. It looks kind of lame.
Talking about her gifting, though, the reason I brought that up was that we had a pastor across the parish, Pastor Wayne Everson.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that, I think she gifted all 4 seasons to that.
Yes.
Which they have, he was in Northfield now, he has those up still. And I believe it was a gift from Margit to them.
I've seen that in the book. I remember that pastor when he was here. She gave away a fair amount. And it's interesting to go through her book, you know, the early 60s, lots of her gifts were $5. And then as time went on, you know, that increased to, you know, she doubled her prices. And then she, you know, increased it to $15, making a killing on them. Not so much. But yeah.
How long did it usually take her to do it?
I don't know. You know, again, I never witnessed her, but I do know that she oftentimes would have numerous paintings going at the same time. When she died, she had several that were unfinished, that were in various states. My folks got one where the it's not canvas, but the background wasn't even covered in some parts by the snow yet. Something was penciled in that I knew was going to be painted over. The window frames aren't in, but it's a winter scene that's close enough. You know how. In fact, somebody offered to finish it for my folks, and it's like, no, it's an appropriate winter scene to indicate her something she was working on. And there were more than one that were left unfinished.
So did she pencil it before she painted it?
I think, as I understand it, the barbed wire fences oftentimes were inked in because it's such a fine line. I think there were some places where you could see where she may have outlined the house before filling it in. I think the intent was to cover it up, but yeah, to get some idea of how things will go. I don't think she outlined heavily before applying the paint. So I don't know how long this is supposed to go, but I've talked way longer than I thought I would. I'd love to talk about some people's paintings that they brought in. I would encourage you to wander the row over there, and anytime you want, you can go to this website. It's under development. I would love suggestions. If there's more information you have on any of them, I can maybe incorporate it. The website ought to be available as long as I'm alive. It's not free. I pay for it every year. If you want to sponsor it, I'm working on a credits page. Top on the credits page is Palmer, and then it trickles down. But check it out, margitmindrum.com. Appreciate the pictures, and thanks for having me here. Yeah, there's Helen. He's going to shoot us, so you need to be looking at him.
Tornado continues. I enjoyed the Sweet Bottom articles because so many of those names I knew. Like I said, I grew up in Loon Valley with my dad. Yeah. It's coming. Slowly. It's almost here.